beam. Her favorite is the beam because she said it's such a challenge.
She starts off with a press to handstand and a planche. She doesn't look too nervous up there, does she, Jeff?
No, she looks nice and quiet and calm and has a lot of confidence. It's a real mental game, the bounce beam. It's much like pommel horse for the guys.
Is this the toughest of all the events, do you think, Jeff? The beam?
Considering I never performed on it, I would have to equate it though with men's, and I know pommel horse for me was the toughest, but once you mastered it, it was a lot of joy, but it took the longest to master out of all the events, and I think beam's probably the same way as far as the toughest mental.
Well, being a coach of women gymnasts, sometimes I get irritated at my gymnasts, and so I'm like, oh, just go for it, and I jump up there, and I'm like, oh, it's so skinny. It's just 4 inches wide, and they're doing
well, do the kids ever say, hey, coach, would you hop up there and show us what you can do?
No, actually, and don't give them any ideas, Johnny.
If you're in Tulsa, Oklahoma, let me give that address.
Okay, Lauren is moving extremely well. She already has her tumbling series out of the way, the back handspring layout, step out, and here she's setting up for a dismount. Round off, back handspring into a double back.
Wow.
That was an extremely difficult dismount, more difficult than the round off double back.
Absolutely. That was a great routine. I think you could see at the end there she had a little facial expression to her coach because from the end here we can tell that she came off the beam really crooked.
Yeah, she was not straight. Here she does a round off in her back handspring.
You'll see it way off to the side. Look at that.
Yeah.
But what a champ just to stay with it and save it like that.
Right. She had to really fight for that one.
Lauren from the
Look, and there she's talking about it now.
Yeah.
She can't believe
she's doing a replay herself.
Yeah.
She might like to come use our monitor and see how she did.
It might scare her if she saw it from here.
Waiting for the scores for Lauren. I think all of these young ladies ranging in age from 10 to 17 and 18 are really to be complimented because of the tremendous pressure they go through to get to this stage to compete for a national championship.
It is. It's
and these teams.
I don't know about that score. Doesn't it seem a little low to you?
A 9.4. You know, I would have expected the score to be a little higher. Maybe they were a little harsh on the dismount, on the directional error.
That could have been. Also, she had one bobble, but that might have been a 2/10 at the most. But that's what New England will take, and we'll see how they stand after this event.
Now let's take a look at Emily Bales, the Golden Bear Club in Berkeley, California. The floor exercises.
Okay, Emily tried to do a full twisting double back for her first pass. Unfortunately, she just didn't get her feet in under her well enough to take off up and make the rotation in the full and back out. But that's her first pass. She has 2 left to go, so she's just going on. We'll see what she can pull out on the second pass.
Nice clean double full. Maybe it was supposed to be a triple, but after the opening pass in the fall, she might have decided to only go a double. Now you notice she was just down on the floor doing some skills. That's actually a requirement that you have to show a change in the dance elements, taking it down onto the floor.
Okay, here Emily's setting up for her last tumbling pass. Round off back handspring, double back somersault. On that pass, ironically, she had a little too much rotation. Okay, you know, I think you have to give it to Emily and give her some admiration because she really could have switched those passes and done the double full and played it safe as a last pass. Instead, she chose to go for the double back in the last pass. I think she'll be rewarded.
Absolutely, and she redeemed herself too, maybe.
Christy, how much time do they have when they go through the floor exercise?
The minimum the routines can be is 1 minute and 10 seconds. The maximum is 1 minute and 30 seconds.
And there was that first pass. You saw the full in, and she was just shy in the rotation. On the second flip, she was trying to get her knees in, and she couldn't quite get them in tight enough to get enough rotation. Now here comes the last pass where she had to redeem herself, and she probably overcompensated. And as you'll see, she goes up, pulls the knees in tight, and she just over-rotates and steps backwards a little bit. And again, trying to overcompensate for the short rotation on the first pass.
9.27.
Actually, that's a decent score. Remember that she lost a half a point due to that miss in the first element. So could have been a 9.775. I'm sure they would have preferred it, but a 9.275 is a respectable score.
Still to come, an opportunity to watch Annie Fagan. Emily Bales will be back again, and Aaron Shanley coming up as the 1993 National Team Gymnastics Championships continues from Haines City, Florida. But first, these messages. Let's take a look at the scores after the second rotation. We're talking tight between Hills Angels and American Twisters.
Real tight. That's only one step on a dismount away from who's first and who's second. And then third is Atlantic Coast, and they're a full point out, but they can still make up.
Then comes New England Express, Jim Strata, Golden Bear, K-Ron, and the All-American. That's after the second rotation. Now let's go to the vault again, and here is Annie Fagan. Annie's just 11 years of age from Oakland, California.
11 years old. You know, these kids really in gymnastics, if they hope to reach the international level, by the time they're 11 or 12, they need to be competing on the national scene. They need to be doing the skills of an international competition. And it's really a lot to ask for an 11-year-old, you'd think. But these kids are tough and ready to handle it. Here she goes.
Okay.
Okay, Annie's vault was a handspring front somersault that starts from a 9.9. So if it were perfectly executed, it would be a 9.9. She had a pretty good landing, a little directional error. Did you see how she didn't step forward, she didn't step back, she stepped sideways, and that'll be a little deduction. It's not quite as explosive as some of the other vaults we've seen, but for an 11-year-old who's just about as tall as a horse, I think a good start.
Absolutely. A nice landing on that. That is, again, a difficult vault to land properly.
Jeff, you talked about the age they have to progress and so forth. How much of an effect on the gymnast does the audience, the fans that come to see them have on it?
You know, it does have an effect, but it's probably subconscious, because you would be amazed when you compete, you naturally tune everything else out. It really is a phenomenon because you're so intense. I remember a number of times not knowing anything that went on around me. And it's just that's how focused you are when you compete. But subconsciously, you're hearing the crowd. So I'm sure it does affect you.
Once again, from the same team, Emily Bales from Golden Bears in Berkeley, California, 9.55 for Annie Fagan.
That's a terrific improvement over yesterday, where her score was an 8.75. She had a fall in the vault yesterday, so regardless of how the team turns out, I think Annie Fagan should be very satisfied with her performance in this event. Here we have Emily setting up for her vault.
Emily is 16.
Oh.
Now,
I thought she was...
Far.
You see, Emily performed a round-off entry vault, also known as a Yurchenko. It's named after the Soviet gymnast who first performed that, Natalia Yurchenko. And the gymnast does a round-off onto the board and goes onto the horse backwards, blind. Here we see a replay, and I don't think she really got a good...
She didn't. She came in a little high.
She was high on. She wasn't even able to get a push off the horse.
Did she start too early, Christy? Did she start?
I think she was a little bit slow doing the back handspring in, so she was high on, and she basically did a double back somersault over the horse.
Boy, you can see the emotion.
Yeah, she's fighting back the tears. I think that short landing kind of jams the ankles, and it does hurt a little bit.
Well, if that doesn't hurt, not touching your hands on the horse certainly doesn't make you feel any confidence.
Much better.
That was
Much
better.
better, yeah.
Still a little bit high on. You don't see the rise on her vault on the second flight that you saw, like in a Dominique Dawes, for instance, where she came in low and was able to push off prior to vertical and land standing up.
Let's look at it one more time. Emily Bales.
This is Emily's second vault. She does a round off onto the board, and you see she gets in, but she's leaving the horse after the vertical, which is a little bit slower, a little later than a Dominique Dawes, so she wasn't able to stand upright. But
oh boy, her ankles are hurting her. Look at her. She's holding them.
After that first vault, that's really an excellent effort to come back and be able to do that.
Absolutely, and you have to remember, just before this, she did full exercise where she landed short on her first pass, the full in, so I'm sure she started to hurt the ankles there. It's tough.
That vault begins with a 9.7 value. So if the vault were performed perfectly, the Yurchenko in a layout position is only 9.7. So even though it looked like she did a good job on the vault, you'll see that reflected in her score that she didn't start from a full 10.
Now to Jim Walker and Dana Baker's club, Jim Stratus. And let's take a look now at Erin Shanley.
She does a nice job on bars. She has a nice release move coming up where she'll do a ginger. There it is. And she did real well. Just a little form deduction, not much.
Now, Jeff, she's got some experience. 12 years. She's only 17.
Started when she was 5.
What age did you start, Christy, when you were...
You're never going to let me live this down, are you? I told you I was a gymnast in my past life. Let's go back to Erin. Okay, Erin did an excellent job on the bar. She had a little separation in the ginger, and her dismount was not as difficult as what some of the other gymnasts perform. Here's her ginger. Watch for the legs when she catches the bar. Do you see her legs separate sideways? That'll be 2/10 off her score.
And yesterday, she did pretty well on the bar. She had a 9.475. So I think tonight will probably be really close to the same thing.
Erin Shanley from Virginia Beach, born in Key West, Florida. Loves the competition. She's 17 years of age, and her favorite food, her grandfather's spaghetti and meatball.
You gotta love it. After competition, she goes in for a good spaghetti and meatball meal with Granddad. See, so they can eat normal foods once in a while, but they do, these kids, that's one thing.
Watch that weight,
it's interesting.
Huh?
They do kind of have to watch the weight and eat proper foods.
9.675 on the bars. That's an improvement over yesterday, so she should be very happy. When you talk about... When you talk about what these gymnasts eat, I think it's important. People see gymnasts all the time, and they're very small, and you need to know that these are naturally small people, and they exercise a lot. We're talking about 6 hours a day. And when you talk about a gymnast diet, you're not talking about a starvation diet. You're talking about children who really need to eat, but they need to eat healthy foods all the time. And I think it's an excellent model for just any young person in athletics to follow a good diet.
This is Marissa Madall, 11 years of age, from Pompano Beach, the American Twisters,
who are ahead just by 0.025, and she's been rock solid so far. It's been a real dynamite performance.
Well, Marissa's had an excellent year. She was the level 9 USGF. Oh no.
I spoke too soon.
Yeah, that's
a shame.
The jinx. But
now she'll get right back up on the beam.
She's the level 9 national champion in the all-around. So she's a very well-rounded athlete. It's unfortunate that she had that break in her tumbling series, but you see how she jumped right back up.
Did you notice the expression, though? She never changed expression, just got right back up on that beam.
Right.
Obviously, she's a tough kid.
Yeah.
The thing about gymnastics is these children practice these routines numerous times, hundreds of times. So that's probably happened to her before. Here's her dismount, a round off, double twist.
Nice finish.
So good job.
Yeah, that fall could cost them. We'll see in the standings coming up, but it was a terrific job.
Let's go back and see what happened.
And she does her one arm back handspring, layout, step out. Oh, that
was her first tumbling series.
Perfect.
Right. Let's see if maybe. And here's the fall coming up. And watch, she just misses. She was off on the first foot. You can see the hips drop off the beam a little bit, and then she tried to save it with getting the second foot on, but I think it was pretty much over when that first foot hit. What do you think, Christy?
Yeah, she was going crooked, and you could see she was fighting, but there's not much room for error when you're working the balance beam. I was very impressed with how her coaches, Tim and Tony Rand, handled her after her performance on the beam. They just gave her a hug and told her to shake it off, and she still has one event left, and she's very important to her team. So I think that attitude's going to help her. Just 11 years old, she has some time.
Yeah.
Lauren LeBranc.
And this is what this meet is so good for, to be at the national championships and experience that and get that under your belt to learn from.
Lauren is 16 from the New England Gymnastics Express.
Here's Lauren's first tumbling pass, a front through to a double back somersault.
You know, what's nice about Lauren is that everything she does is so smooth.